This is the Harry Loomis Show. Welcome into the Harry Loomis Show this morning. It's Wednesday, October 2nd. I did not plan on making a video this morning, but I had to talk about this because we had massive news drop from Bob Pockra saying that 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports have filed a lawsuit against NASCAR over the charter dispute. We didn't know how this was going to end, with Front Row and 2311 being the only teams not to sign the charter agreement back when most of the teams did a couple weeks ago, and we didn't know what was gonna be made out of it, what was gonna end up happening. Now we know that they're going to be taken to court. We have a joint statement from Front Row Motorsports in 2311 that reads, "We share a passion for racing, the thrill of competition and winning. Off the racetrack, we share a belief that change is necessary for the sport we love. Together, we brought this antitrust case so that racing can thrive and become a more competitive and fair sport in ways that will benefit teams, drivers, sponsors, and, most importantly, fans. I've been part of this racing community for 20 years and couldn't be more proud of the Front Row Motorsports team and our success, but the time has come for change. We need a more competitive and fair system where fans, drivers, and sponsors can be rewarded for our collective investment by building long-term enterprise value, just like every other successful professional sports league." That statement coming from owner Bob Jenkins. So another quote here I'm going to read. I'm not sure exactly where this is from. I got this sent over from my good friend Jonathan Field. Quote, "The teams felt they were operating in a, quote, constant state of financial vulnerability that put some of the most successful organizations out of business," the lawsuit states. It quotes NASCAR Hall of Famer Jimmy Johnson, who has mostly retired as a driver and is the co-owner of a fledgling Cup Series team. In the words of NASCAR Hall of Famer Jimmy Johnson, the lawsuit says, "The best thing to be is NASCAR, the second best, a driver, the last thing, a team owner." So obviously a lot to unpack in those quotes. The charter agreement just got signed a couple weeks ago, back in September. And pulling up a quote from Jenna Fryer, it wasn't exactly a good deal for the teams, but they were so far off that it almost felt like a lot of the teams were just sick and tired of trying to negotiate and weren't happy with where they were at. Here's a quote from Rick Hendrick. This is from Jenna Fryer. "I think we worked really hard for 2 years and got it down to, you're not going to make everyone happy. And I think it got down to, I was just tired. Not everybody was happy, but in any negotiation, you're not going to get everything you want. And so I felt it was a fair deal, and we protected the charters, which was number one. We got the revenue increase. I feel a lot of the things we didn't like got taken out, so I'm happy with where we were." That's the important thing. 13 teams, all but two, agreed to the deal. Obviously, those two teams being Front Row Motorsports and 2311 Racing. And it's really interesting that these are the two teams to begin with that didn't sign and are filing this lawsuit, particularly Front Row Motorsports, in my opinion, because when the news broke earlier that Stewart-Haas Racing was going to be folding and all four charters were going to be up for sale, a lot of the talk was about how no one should or no one was going to buy the charters until a resolution got solved and a new agreement was found. Meanwhile, the first team announced to have bought a charter within, I think, 24 hours of the Stewart-Haas news was Front Row Motorsports. And now all of a sudden they're in this position where they haven't signed the new agreement. Who knows what's going to happen in 2025? And now they're taking NASCAR to court. So obviously a really interesting situation there. And for Denny Hamlin, I feel like this clears up some of the comments that he was making on Sunday that he got blasted for, specifically by Kevin Harvick, where he basically said, "I'm not in it mentally right now," when getting asked about his pit crew issues. Harvick saying, "Why would you ever admit that?" We didn't know that this was brewing behind the scenes. So I personally never sued anybody. I have to imagine that if you're taking someone to court, especially the organization that you make a living competing in, that probably weighs on your mind quite a bit. So just a wild situation in NASCAR. There are a lot of talks about, what the charter was supposed to bring, what they wanted with the new agreement, whether it was more TV revenue, whether it was more just payouts in particular. Basically, every team owner is saying that they net lose money by competing, winning prize money and everything like that isn't making up for what it costs to spend. Obviously, the next gen car has been super expensive. Here's a blip from Yahoo Sports as well. This is another important thing. Teams have always wanted four things out of the charter negotiations: a larger share of the revenue, a seat at the table for governance issues, a cut on business deals NASCAR does that uses team or driver likenesses, and most importantly, for drivers to become permanent, locking in stability. This article from Jenna Fryer goes on to say Jim France, a son of NASCAR founder Bill France Sr. and current chairman, was never going to make charters permanent, and it became a major sticking point. The final offer did not include permanent charters. It also has language that would allow the series owning France family to hold charters and field their own teams, according to multiple team owners. That was the really interesting part. No one knew exactly what that meant, but the fact that it got added into the new charter agreement was very interesting. I don't know if it's a situation we would ever see. Another situation that got mentioned earlier was that if a team was in the bottom three in standings for 3 straight years, NASCAR had the option to revoke their charter as well. And I don't think we ever saw that happening. There were some scenarios where I do believe it could have happened, but that didn't end up happening. Anyways, Jeff Gordon, the vice chairman of Hendrick Motorsports and a key member of the team negotiating group, simply shrugged about the decision to sign the charter agreement when asked by the Associated Press. He noted that Jim France had individual meetings with several top team owners, a strategy Hamlin had described as dividing and conquering, and that most felt they were never going to get a better offer from NASCAR. So make no mistake about it, just because 2311 and Front Row Motorsports are the only ones filing this lawsuit against NASCAR, the only ones that haven't signed the agreement. They are by no means the only ones that are unhappy with the way the charter negotiations were played out, the way that, or with the agreement that got signed by most teams to begin with. No one is happy about this. And here's another quote. This one's probably the most damning from the lawsuit. The France family and NASCAR are monopolistic bullies, the team said in the lawsuit, a copy of which was obtained by the Associated Press. And bullies will continue to impose their will to hurt others until their targets stand up and refuse to be victims. That moment has now arrived. So I'm going to tell you this. Behind the scenes, I'm sure we're seeing a lot of people supporting 2311 and Front Row Motorsports. If you expect to hear any comments from any of these two teams going forward until this gets settled in court, or by anybody else for that matter, prepare to be disappointed. Obviously, this is a legal situation now. It's not just a NASCAR negotiation issue, so people are going to be very tight-lipped about it. But this is a fascinating development. There's a lot that's going to continue to unpack here in the coming weeks. So I'm very, very curious to see where this plays out. I just wanted to do a quick video on it, kind of share my thoughts. I don't know where this ends up, what ends up happening, but I know it's going to be hilarious to see the reaction if one of Tyler Reddick or Denny Hamlin wins the NASCAR championship this year. That's going to be really, really interesting to see. We'll keep following along with this. Thank you guys for watching. We will update you later, and we'll talk again soon. This is the Harry Loomis Show.